Well, let's get started. So we may have a couple more members joining us, but we don't want to hold anybody up. So welcome to the June 11th, 2020 Hingham Historic Districts Commission meeting. This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to an order issued by the Governor of Massachusetts dated March 12, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You're hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. So just to sort of, I'd like to kind of run through voting for the hearings. Are there any commission members that have any conflicts with any of the applications tonight?
No.
No. Okay. So just to kind of go over voting members, so we have 4 voting members, and I'd like to appoint a 5th for each of the hearings. So the voting members are myself, Hans, Carol, and Catherine. So assuming Carol joins us, she'll be the 4th. So what I'd like to do is appoint a 5th for each of the hearings. Justin, if you could be the 5th, would you mind on 1517 Lincoln?
Happy to do that.
If Tomas, if you're available, if you'd be able to do 650 Main.
Yeah.
And Ben, if you could do 115 Leavitt.
Sure.
Hi, Robert Edson here. I was not able to click in for some reason. It was unavailable, so I'm on the phone.
Okay, thanks for joining, Robert. 6771 North Street. Ben, would you be also able to do that one?
Yes, no problem.
And then 100 Main Street. Tomas, could you also do that one?
Sure.
Okay. And I think we're still waiting for Carol. So, sorry, Andrew, you're on mute.
Duh. Yeah, you can't read lips. What?
Not yet.
Oh, that's Siri. God, what a mess. Carol is had difficulty getting on through her computer, so I asked her just to use her cell phone. So we'll see if we hear from her.
Okay. As she's a voting member, should we reassign for this first hearing, or sort of?
I would say we should.
Okay. Okay. Ben, could you be a voting member on 1517 Lincoln?
Sure, no problem.
Okay, so just to kind of go over voting members for the first hearing, would be myself, Hans, Catherine, Justin, and Ben. Okay. Okay. All right. So 1517 Lincoln is the first hearing. Thank you for having us all out there over the weekend. It was great to see the property, see the existing conditions in context of your proposals. So thank you very much. Are there any updates on the project you'd like to go over?
Seven Dziergowski here. I think that was a very productive on-site meeting, and the issues that were brought up at the last Zoom meeting on the 14th of May or just that we stake out the building, which we did. And then the discussion about existing street landscape, which in our view, in our proposal, has been kind of overgrown and maybe something that could be improved on and could relate better to what's also in the neighborhood, and particularly across the street. And then there was discussion about what's shown as a retaining wall, but in actuality, the site visit showed that it's in pretty bad shape and really ends up being pretty much riprap, just piled boulders. So our proposal would be to rebuild that and return that as a retaining wall at the barn, where it's within the 15 feet of the property line, and repair in a reasonable way the rest of it. But it is not a mix of concrete and stone, and it's not stone that we need to replicate. It really has to be rebuilt. And then the other thing that I think all observed on site was that the shed at the Lincoln Building across the street could be in a very nice relationship to the relocated shed on this property, and that we would propose, the foundation for it resembling the fieldstone foundation of the shed across the street. And of course, it's the existing shed on 1517 is all cedar clapboards, cedar shingles and cedar roof, which would be restored. And it was pointed out at the last meeting that there are a couple of replacement windows, which as we restore the shed would be similar to multi-pane windows on other sides. So I think we're open to either not moving the shed, demolishing it. It didn't seem to be a lot of interest in it. It's really not historic, unless the 50s are historic. And we were proposing landscaping on what's now fairly overgrown evergreens, which we're happy to leave if that's something that the commission feels is as part of the streetscape. But I think the feeling when we were all in sight was that it really could be much more of a continuity of the character that's across the street in both landscaping and building placement. So that's all I have.
Okay. Thanks, Evie.
Yep.
Before I get into sort of commission commentary, is there anybody else on the line who would like to speak to this application? Okay, and sort of before I sort of get into the commission members' thoughts on it, Ben, I wanted to ask you your thoughts on that shed. I know Sevi mentioned the dates there. I wanted to get your sense of what you thought of potentially the age of that or the condition of that shed structure.
Sure. So when we walked inside, I saw mortise and tenon joinery, some older timbers. It's the sheathing was an older 7/8 thick or even thicker, the sheathing on the roof, and it was certainly wider than what one could get today, readily anyway. So my assessment was at its oldest, probably mid 1800s, but I would not say it's 20th century. not with the age of and size of the rafters. Certainly, the beams were dressed, but not to today's standards. So there was some machining done.
Okay. Thanks, Ben. So I'd like to open it up to the commission members on their thoughts with the application. Who would like to start?
And I'll jump in and ask, could you review for us the plans for that shed? I'll ask you to do that, but I'll just share one immediate comment from the site visit, which was very helpful. And we, at our last meeting, were concerned about exactly what that wall was, how significant a wall it was. And I think what I've perceived was a really very conventional riprap, and that almost anything that is proposed might be an improvement on that. And there, but I didn't perceive anything
Hello?
historic that required very
Hello?
careful
Hello?
preservation consideration.
It's Carol. I made it.
Oh,
We got something got knocked out in the windstorm today, I guess.
Well, welcome, Carol.
Thank you.
Carol and Robert are joining us via phone, and we're into discussion regarding 1517 Lincoln. Justin?
Okay, perfect.
And so I was comforted by the wall, or just seeing that there wasn't anything proposed for the destruction that felt very, very significant. But would you review for me? I'm sorry if I don't understand what the plans are for that existing shed.
Oh, for the wall, Justin?
No, not for the wall as much as the shed that Commissioner Burnham was just describing.
Oh, well, we're proposing relocating the shed. You can see the location in the site plan where it currently is, and we would move it forward and locate it pretty much in what's now a gravel parking lot. So it would be behind the street landscape as it now exists. Would be in the same orientation it is now, because the shed is accessed from currently from the side of the building toward the house. So that, all the openings would remain the same. We would just restore all the finishes and repair and replace to match windows where there are replacement windows from a more recent time. So it would be completely restored.
Thank you for the addition, that clarity.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me for a minute. Justin, can you either speak up or turn up your volume?
Is that any better? It
Oh,
might be
much
just
better, much
okay. It's
better.
just
Thank
how
you.
my microphone was hanging.
Oh, watch that
I'll try and
microphone.
speak.
Thank you.
I actually have a question for Ben. Ben, I didn't go in the shed because there was a bunch of people in there. You're saying you think it was built in the possibly earlier than 1950s?
Well, the windows are certainly much more recent. No, I'm thinking this is more 1850s would be the absolute earliest. It is a possibility. I don't believe it's turn of the century. I don't think it was, certainly there's some portions of that are more recent, but these are finishes in the frame. It's mid 1800s to late 1800s.
So the structure, but is this structure itself historic? Has it been deemed historic, or is it that because it's in this neighborhood, that's what gives it prominence?
I would say the latter.
Okay. Because original thought that I had expressed last time, especially if it was a 1950s shed and maybe it was just remodeled in the 1950s, was my concern of pushing it closer to the street and having such a, kind of changing that streetscape. But I think my attitude changes a little bit if this is a 150-year-old structure. I think I'd lean towards wanting it to be kept, not demoed. But I still have some concerns with moving it closer to the street. Seeing that shed across the street being kind of in a prominent location on that site, gives it a little bit of context.
Sevi, how many feet is it coming towards the street?
We'd be 25 feet, a little over 25 feet from the street.
Yeah, I mean, it almost comes flush with the front of this house and the neighbor's house. They kind of all start to line up within a couple feet.
It wouldn't change the grading at all. It would be
Right.
within that
Right.
portion. And, it's not really part of the streetscape in a prominent way now because of the street planting.
Yes, Mr. Fitzgerald?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer that by moving it forward, it actually would give it greater prominence from the vantage point of coming from town on Lincoln Street, just in terms of it having multiple vantage points.
Yeah, but for me, it's not so much of trying to quote unquote put it on display. It's the experience of the street, and we take a secondary structure and we give it more prominence on the street, on the public realm. I mean, before Ben kind of noted that it's possibly older than we originally thought, I was thinking, get rid of it. Don't put it on the street and impact the historic neighborhood in that way. But now knowing that it potentially has some historic significance, I lean towards maintaining it, relocating it. I have concerns with putting it so close to the street.
Are the evergreens going to be staying, Sevi or Mr. Fitzgerald?
That's open for discussion. I mean, we could leave them, but as we show in that sketch on the front cover, we propose something that is more like what's across the street, more shade trees, street trees, and landscaping. The grades wouldn't change. There's quite a rise from the street, by the way, to that parking lot. Those of you who walked up that driveway know how steep it is. So, I mean, our feeling about the arrangement of buildings is that the proposed barn and this cottage and this shed are a pretty nice grouping that really have much more to do with the relationship to the house, which is quite a large, long facade. Then the shed is kind of off to the side and really doesn't relate to anything. So it seems an opportunity that with the three structures, with the balance of two informal structures, the barn and the shed with the house and new landscaping, it could be very attractive.
But I think if you move those evergreens, that property will really participate with the surrounding buildings. I think much more than it does now. Everything's so hidden as a result of those evergreens. I think it'd be wonderful if you did take those down.
Yeah.
And as you pointed out, Sevi, just across the way, there is another accessory building. And I noticed in your rendering, if I look at your rendering, I think your rendering shows that shed actually taller than it will be. That's a fairly flat location that you're moving it to, because the car is parked there now, and that's been graded already fairly flat. So I would think that the foundation would be a bit shorter than what you've shown here in this rendering.
Well, it would be pretty much what it is now, because on the back of the shed will be at the level of the proposed barn. So the grade would drop from there. And currently, the foundation, which is nothing but piers and some lattice work, have that kind of exposure. So it would be the same kind of elevation of foundation toward the street that it is now.
Yeah, Ben, if you look at the hand-drawn future site plan, the garage floors, the proposed new garage floor is 81 feet. They'd keep the shed at 81 feet, so you're still going up steps. So they're looking to build it up 3 feet, because it looks like the contours are about 78, 79 there.
Right. But it slopes along the shed.
Catherine?
Right.
I think I'm in agreement with Ben and Sevi that currently this little shed kind of sticks out a bit, lonely and small in comparison to the larger home. But I think once that the garage is set in there, it's going to add a little balance to the existing home structure and create a nice triad of structures to keep it more balanced. I think it works very, very well in that regard. And then in terms of the little shed across the way, I feel that it's kind of a nice symmetry there as you're coming up that historic street and having those two little sheds, kind of quirky sheds there, add a nice feature. And what I noticed when reviewing the other homes on Lincoln Street is that all those properties are very manicured right up to the wall, and those big shaggy evergreens don't really fit with the other streetscape. So I think it would definitely be an enhancement to removing them, and also show off kind of the new improved balance to the property. Because right now that shadow's a little bit awkward next to the big house, and I think the garage adds to the harmony of it all.
Should I say my opinion? It's Carol.
Yeah, Catherine, did you have more?
Yeah, the other little thing I would like to add is, while I've got the floor, is that the windows on the street side of the shed were kind of interesting 12/9s, which is kind of unusual, and I thought that would be nice to keep those. Maybe not. I don't know if they'd be able to be duplicated on the back, but I think the 12/9s are nice and handy to a shed, and it adds to its character and charm.
They're cottage windows.
Yeah.
Carol?
Yes, hi. It's awkward because I can't see you guys. I don't know if it's my turn or not. I agree with the small windows. I think the shed is really charming, and in particular in that neighborhood. And I've always felt that house on both sides really needed a big barn in the back. It's old enough that they would have had to have had a horse and a carriage, and to have had no building back there always seemed sort of vacant to me. I think this is going to be a lovely tie-in between the home and the shed, which always looked diminutive next to the big house. I was originally thinking those pine trees were going to hide a lot of stuff. Now I see everyone else's point. By taking them down, and they would grow too tall and die out anyway eventually, You're opening up this view to across the street, which also has little outbuildings. My only question is really the barn door itself. I keep saying barn because that's what we hope it'll look like. Can that be in two sections instead of one large section? Are the homeowner hoping to sit in his car and push a button and the whole thing goes up and lets his car in? Or could it look like more like a barn with two separate doors?
I defer to Sevi.
I mean, we're open for discussion. Carol, we're trying to make it feel like a barn. When you have two doors, and maybe there's a way of you'd have a sliding door, but you might have a panel if it were a barn. But we didn't want to have two side-by-side separate doors.
No, I'm more thinking of, I'm in my kitchen looking out the front of my barn, which is 1791. There are two sliding doors.
Yeah.
One goes to the right, one goes to the left, and it really looks like a barn. You can't imagine it's a new garage or anything. I don't know. You guys are the experts, but whatever you can do to make this look like it was the old barn for the house, obviously that's an advantage.
That's the idea.
And Carol, is your door a modern door?
Was that a question to me? What?
That was. I was just wondering if the door you mentioned is it a modern door that looks old?
No. This is the original. It slides on metal. I don't even know what you call them. Sliders up above. You can push one side open or the other side. It's very original and falling apart, and tall.
Is a good one. The transom lights on the garage door are more modern look. And if you put a header maybe across the top of the barn, that could mimic the mechanism. Then what is the mechanism that the barn, the glides ride on?
The track.
Barn traditionally rides on a barn door traditionally rides on glides. I can't think of the terminology.
A track and rollers.
Track and rollers. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if perhaps there's a way to kind of create a faux board or facade that would sort of mimic a track and roller kind of design there. Because in some ways I agree with the assessment there.
Oh, sure. I mean, this is schematic. The idea and why it's off center is so it'd be more barn-like. So we'd be open to exploring that detail as the design develops. But I think that's what we're after.
So just for clarity's sake, will the barn, the actual barn drawings be proposed? Will they be presented at a separate time? This is just a schematic for?
Oh, they are actually in the presentation.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. I just wasn't certain.
Yeah, the barn drawings are in they're the last two drawings.
Yeah. Okay. I see those. I was confused because I maybe indicated that the drawing was in evolution or something.
Well, I mean, it's schematic, and as we develop and detail the design, I mean, it suggests the materials and character, but where I think that piece of it, the barn door, and having it feel as much like a barn as possible is where we're headed. But the windows in the barn would, reflect more the variety that you have in the cottage. And we suggested that. I mean, this is a studio space, so the gable ends would, Mr. Fitzgerald needs a studio space with height and light, and so it would be kind of an interesting gable end that would not be a hayloft look, but I think that's not really part of the streetscape, but it adds a lot of interest to the structure. But it would be, I mean, the key of using larger windows is to have the proportion of all the lights be the same. That's, historically multiples of the same size light. What harmonize a building in terms of the openings.
Sevi, is the tall window going up to the peak on the left side of the barn historic in any nature?
Is it historic? Well, it will be.
It stands out to, as I'm looking through the drawings, it stands out as a more modern look, but
I mean, there were windows like that in the 18th century.
there were, okay.
Depends on the type of building. I think it's kind of a mixed-use building. I think to do just equal double hungs, we're picking up the cottage feel in multiple things, but I think it's out of place, and particularly that the sash proportions and the proportion of the lights would be the same. I mean, maybe we could separate, instead of one tall window, we could have a smaller window above and break it, so those are things that may be more historic, but I think it's all fairly harmonious.
Thomas or Hans or Robert, have any comments?
Well, I had the same concern as Carol, was the shape of the door on the barn just seemed outsized. And I realize that some barn doors are on rollers, but that's not what this is, right?
Right.
So it's hard to tell from the drawing exactly what it would look like.
Well, it was shown as an overhead door, but it would be paneled in front with barn boards. I mean, there's a way of customizing an overhead door.
Oh, it had panels on it then. Okay.
It would have panels, yeah, but it wouldn't be kind of a gatehouse type retro panel. It would be barn-like, just boards. I mean,
Okay.
maybe a way of splitting it into two doors, setting one a little bit back of the other. I think, that we kind of considered how we might make it more barn-like. So I think, that's something that could evolve.
Sevi,
Okay.
is that a standard 9-foot wide door?
It's 16. A standard door. But, it's not a big deal to do custom garage doors either. Companies all do the retrofit. I did it in my house.
Okay. Hans or Tomas? Hans?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Not a whole lot to add here to the discussion. I think a lot of it's been laid out here. I think it was really helpful to come out to the to see the property last weekend. I think there's a nice complementary feel going on here with these two structures of the house and also the Lincoln House across the street.
Mhm.
And coming out there, you can see that this is an overgrown property. And I was a little bit skeptical at first about clearing this all out, but coming out there and seeing the drawing here and the vision, I think you've depicted it well, Sevi and Darrin. I think this is going to be a nice complement to Lincoln Street and the Benjamin Lincoln House across the street. When I think of this small building that we're talking about, a shed, it looks more like a workshop to me. and
Mhm.
it's got more of a feel like Hersey Farm, you know. And typically we don't have we don't like to see the sheds have prominence in you know, on the front of a property, or even, you know, even the alignment of it can throw you because it detracts from the main house. But I think with the you know, given the age of it and the barn that you want to build here, I think it works, and I think it's a nice balance of ballast to what's going on here on the street. So I think you know, the granite stone wall, Darrin, up front, you know, if you could bring that back a little bit too, in front of those two structures, really clean that up, I think it could really show off the right side of this property, and you're going to get a vantage point coming, you know, leaving town, heading down Lincoln Street. It's just gonna pop. It's gonna look nice, I think. So, good work.
Thanks, Hans. Tomas?
Yeah, so I really don't want to wasn't going to add anything. I was more going to say that based on what Catherine and Hans had said, I think that the two of them said it very well. I think it balances out really well. So I just wanted to thank you for having us out and say I think this is really a great enhancement overall to the current property. And if you could save that shed, bring it forward, I think that would be great and give it balance. Also with what's across the street. My only question before was more like as it pertained to the shed. There was talk about maybe putting the foundation on fieldstones, which would obviously be beautiful, but from a financial perspective, it's currently on stills covered by lattice. And I assume that would be less expensive simply moving it on the stills and still covering it with the lattice. And I was just asked that the rest of the commission, since it's currently looking like that, if the applicant chose to, maybe we should allow the applicant to make that decision once they started looking at the project. I think it would be gorgeous to have it on the fieldstones, but might not necessarily be a financial viable situation. So I would ask when we made the motion, possibly to leave it up to the applicant at that time. That would be it.
I think that's fair. I think, you know, it's sort of replacement in kind or an improvement to fieldstone, you know, seems reasonable. Are you, just a few questions on details. I noticed that you're proposing wood windows. Are these true divided light? Are they simulated? Will they be insulated or not?
I would like them to be simulated, have that option, I think, to I think that certainly in the barn, which is a studio, which is year-round. I mean, a lot of the shed, I mean, back to the foundation, it's up to Mr. Fitzgerald how he would see using that shed. But if we relocate it, we got to meet code in terms of footing, and by the time you're through pouring piers, or you're better off probably doing a foundation. And when you face something with fieldstone, it's doable. But that I think I'm glad you'd like to leave that to the owner to figure. But I think that if the shed is to continue in the kind of storage use and maybe workshop, then we could leave those true divided lights with the storm stash, just you know, Brosco type units. But I think the barn, certainly in the upper level, is a large volume. It's going to be a year-round workspace, and we'd want to go with insulated, simulated light.
Okay.
And actually, my recollection of those windows was they're interesting, as Catherine pointed out, it was an interesting configuration, but I think they were modern.
Well, on the side they are. Well, they're actually probably, if this building is really mid 19th century, they're probably all replacement. But certainly the ones on the downtown side are just replacement windows, single, 1/1.
Hey, Mike, I don't know if the storms would look appropriate on this wood shop or workshop or whatever you want to call it. I think it's either got to be a true divided light with nothing, if you're not going to insulate it, or an SDL, it just.
Well, let's say SDL, then throughout. I mean, I think we can always come back and propose single glazed, true divided, but if you guys are okay with SDL, then we should make them all that. But you're right. I mean, to put a combination window on something where you're trying to
A storm would
replicate
seem odd.
what's across the street is not going to make it.
Perhaps there's a way to find some salvage windows. I think the shed is simple enough that, something simple in the back just to fill in those little, to replace the replacement windows. Something simple from a salvage yard would be appropriate in my mind. Maybe you could even find a 12/9 to match.
Are you proposing any light fixtures?
No, I mean, I think there would be something at the entrance to the barn, which is on the side. So, I mean, that's something we could submit at a later date. There would have to be some sort of ground fixture, but that would pretty much cover the area of access.
And so what I think I would suggest, if there's a motion to be made, that in the motion we're including an additional study on the door, the
Right.
garage overhead door or sliding door,
Right.
cut sheets for the windows, ultimately details for whatever that garage door becomes,
Right.
as well as any exterior light.
Fair enough.
So, okay. Well, are there any other comments from the commission or anybody else?
I do have one more. I'm just, I guess there's quite a few stairs going up to the workshop right now, and there'll be stairs again. I'm assuming those will be wood, or what is the plan for those? It's not quite clear.
Well, let's assume they'd be rebuilt wood to be informal. We don't want to make it into too much of a habitable space. But yeah, currently they're informal wood stairs. We'd have to pick those.
Okay, so if somebody would like to make a motion, I think, just to clarify voting members again on this application, it would be Catherine, myself, Hans, Justin, and Ben. So would anybody like to make a motion?
I can do that.
Ben?
Okay. I'm just jotting down a couple more notes here. I'd like to make a motion for a certificate of appropriateness for 1517 Lincoln Street. Moving the existing shed as indicated on the plot plan. The shed stairs to be wood, informal and wood. The shed foundation facing at the discretion of the applicant, whether that be a stone veneer or, we want to do lattice there or slats? Sebi?
Well, I mean, it's lattice now. I think slats, I mean, I think it's great that we're leaving this open, but I still think
Okay, so it's a replace in kind,
replacing
Or
kind, yeah. I mean,
replace in kind or the stone facing.
yeah, that makes sense.
Windows of the shed to be simulated divided light all wood.
Yes, I think that we can always go to, I'm not even sure, Darrin, that, you know, we can restore those windows. I think they'd be very hard to replicate. And the problem with replication is finding the exact same, as I say, the light proportions are what are the key to the harmonizing building openings. And it's going to be pretty hard to exactly replicate those, but we can try. But I think if you're open to simulated divided, and we could then propose a replacement and restoration with something similar, that you would be open to that.
Okay. Then for the garage or barn, as drawn April 8th, 2020. Overhead garage door, additional study of overhead garage door to be submitted.
Right.
How about the colors? Is that going to be submitted later?
Well, it's all natural finish. I think the idea is that the shed and the barn would be the same.
So the trim would match the color of the house, the trim color?
Shingles. No, we wouldn't want to match the color of the house, because then you lose that balance. And the garage door, again, we'll submit that.
Okay, and then cut sheets of any exterior fixtures to be submitted.
Right.
Now, this is a question, I think, for Andrea, as it relates to the trees, the pine trees in the front. Is that part of the application?
No, but it doesn't really, well, wait a minute. Let's see. What do you have down here, Sevi? No.
Well, we call for new landscaping at existing
Yes.
parking lot
Where is it?
and evergreen. So, yeah, we call for it being new.
I don't know. I think in general, we really don't review the landscape, just the
Right.
hardscape.
Right.
In this case, we do have, has a substantial impact, those two trees, and they'll be very noticeable when they're gone. But I don't think we need to necessarily include that.
Okay. Then, am I forgetting anything?
Was it the retaining wall we wanted to hit on, Ben?
What? Tell me more about the specifics of the retaining wall.
Well, weren't we just going to remain silent on our opinions about the retaining wall?
The riprap was just going
The
to
riprap.
continue as needed?
We're going to stabilize it as needed, but it's going to be informal. It'll be the same fieldstone feeling. It's just, that's something that I want a structural engineer to look at.
Okay, so that's acceptable, then the riprap to remain and repaired as needed.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. I think you covered it. Is there a second?
Hey, Ben,
Second.
you want to just talk about the roofing?
Oh, yeah.
I know Savvy talked about red cedar to complement the Lincoln building across the street.
Yeah,
Yeah, it does call out cedar shingles for the roof.
Okay.
on the shed, that's right, but on the barn, it would be asphalt to match the house.
Oh, okay. So barn asphalt to match the house and then the cedar roof on the shed.
Right, that's what it shows in the drawings.
Oh, yes. Barn windows, simulated divided light, all wood.
Right.
Catherine, were you gonna say something? You're on mute, though. Catherine, you're on mute.
Sorry.
Okay.
I was thinking about the asphalt on the barn, and given the mass of the workshop shed and the barn, I'm wondering if at least the front of the barn could be, or the garage could be cedar, because I feel like that works well with the siding and the shed, if that's all cedar with the straight roof, and then maybe on the back side, if we don't see that on the street, that could be asphalt as a compromise. Just wondering.
Sebby, you there?
I'm here. I was waiting for you.
I think consistency on the same structure should be, makes sense in terms of
I would support
and
Michael's
cedar
view.
on the roof of the shed seems consistent.
And I would support the shed being different, but
Mr.
a
Chairman,
strong feeling.
Yes, Andrea.
I think we need to leave the roofing material to the discretion of the owner. Typically, if something is new construction or if it's got, we never require cedar. It's great, but
Okay.
Sorry about that.
no, that's all right, Catherine.
Learning as I go.
It's a very good point.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay. Catherine, how do you vote?
I vote in favor, yay.
Hans, how do you vote?
Aye.
Justin, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Ben, how do you vote?
Aye.
I as well. Thank you very much. You've passed.
Thank you very much. So
Thank you.
some
Thank
conditions.
you.
And thank you for that term triad, Catherine. I love it.
You're welcome.
3 is unity.
Okay. Thank you for waiting on 650 Main Street, which is the next hearing, which is for the installation of a fence. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the project?
So I'm proposing to install a cedar fence that's going to start in the back of the property, right beside the garage, and run along my property line, not out to the sidewalk. There's a big tree at the end of the property that's the neighbor's tree, so it would stop right before that tree. It would be a 6-foot high fence, about I'm not sure if anyone had a chance to drive by my property to see anything.
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so if you see the neighbor's property, their cars, the way that their driveway is, where they face parking my property, that's where the 6-foot would stop and then transition down to 4-foot, ending right before the tree.
And it would essentially go to essentially the rear corner of the new garage.
Correct.
Okay. And I'm looking at the photos that were submitted of the style of fence.
Mhm.
Looks to be a solid board
Yep.
here. With a simple transition down to the 4 as you described.
Yep.
And I noticed in some of the photos, which were great, thank you for including those, there were certain items that were circled that looked like stakes in the ground. Were those?
Yep. Those are the property markers.
Okay, and so that's just, so that's, your fence will be inside of those
Correct.
stake lines.
Yes.
Okay. And is your plan to leave the cedar to weather? Are you planning to paint it at all?
I was gonna leave it to weather unless there's a problem with that.
Okay.
I see there's a little stone wall where the fence went. Is there any plans to change that in any way?
No, I wasn't even gonna go that far because the way that the property line is, I was gonna stop right before it hits that wall because I didn't want to go to the street with the fence. So I was gonna leave that as is.
So I noticed when I did a drive-by that there's a similar fence just a few houses down
Mhm.
to from your property.
This is Carol. May I ask a question?
Yes, Karen.
Hi. I'm just wondering if you have spoken to your next door neighbor and put markers so they could see where it would be and they're all in agreement with this and they don't have any problem with it?
I haven't spoken to them about the actual fence yet. They knew I was either gonna do a fence or put landscape in, either way. But I did mention the fence to them before my construction started.
Okay. I'm just wondering if they agree on the property line. I know along Main Street, many of us have very obscure markings between our properties, and sometimes it just looks over time, the neighbors sort of agree on where it is, or whether you had somebody come in who professionally had marked this.
That's professionally marked for construction that's going on right now.
Okay, good. And no intention of painting it or changing the color?
No.
Okay. Is it mostly to give you a place to plant? It's not really keeping the neighbor's dog out of your driveway or anything other than just aesthetics and putting in some landscaping?
Yeah, it's just mostly for privacy. Before the construction started, there was all overgrown bushes and weeds there. And once I removed those, there's just no privacy now.
Right. Good.
I think that the fence is in keeping with the neighborhood as there is already one existing down the road, and
Yeah, there's several right there. Yeah.
and the fact that it's set back from the street nicely and tapers down to a lower elevation is eases it, I think, considerably from the shape. So seems to be in keeping with the other properties.
Oh, I thought of one other thing. This kind of fencing always has support pieces that show from one side or the other. Would you have the posts on your side so you're looking at that?
So
Not aiming at it.
the post will be on my side, so the nicer side will face the neighbors.
Good, thank you.
Just out of curiosity, I was just looking at the plans. Do you have any idea how long the fence is? It looks to me it's got to be what, 100, 110 feet long altogether?
I don't have the exact length of it. I just know that there is going to be 9 6-foot tall panels, which I think are 8 feet wide, and then one tapered down panel, which is 4 feet wide, and then possibly 3 4-foot high sections.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again for me?
Yep. So it's 9 sections of the cedar panel that are 6 feet high by 8,
Yep,
and then one angle down, 6
yeah,
foot
that's
high.
the transition.
Yep. And then 3 sections that are 4 foot tall. He doesn't have the width of those though on the.
But I assume they're gonna be somewhere in the ballpark of the other ones, right? So probably 8 feet long as well, just 4 feet tall?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hans?
Thanks, Mike. Kristen, just one question for you. Just so I'm clear on one of the diagrams, the 4-foot section is going to be closer to Main Street, right? You're going to taper up towards.
So the higher section will start in the rear of the garage, and then it will taper down right where my side door is, my entry side door, which is where the neighbor's driveway is
Okay.
facing me.
Yeah.
So then it will go lower to 4 feet towards the street.
4 feet towards Main Street, and it's just one section that's going to do the tapering, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you for these pictures. They're very helpful.
Thank you.
Any other commission members? Justin?
No, I find this proposed application an appropriate project.
Great. Well, unless there are any other comments, just to run through the voting members on this one, would be myself, Hans, Carol, Catherine, and Tomas. So would anybody like to make a motion?
I can do that.
Thanks, Tomas.
I would like to make a motion for a certificate of appropriateness for 650 Main Street for a fence between 650 Main Street and 648 Main Street, starting at the far left corner of the garage, running between 650 and 648 towards Main Street, at an approximate length it comes out to about 100 feet. Is that close enough, or should I mention the length and different?
I think it's fine because
It's
you're talking
fine.
about the end point and the beginning point.
Yeah. The fence will be solid cedar, staying natural, with a 8 panels of 6 feet that are 6 feet tall, that are each 8 feet long, followed by a simple transition down to 4 feet, and then with 3 panels following that, 8 feet long, 4 feet tall. I think that's it.
I think if I could just clarify one thing, I think it's, I think what I heard was that it's not going to necessarily be staying to be natural. It's going to be natural left to weather. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, Carol?
Yep.
So let's see. Okay, Carol, how do you vote?
Aye.
Catherine, how do you vote?
Aye.
Hans, how do you
Aye.
vote? Tomas, how do you vote?
Aye.
And I for myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
On to the next hearing, which is 115 Leavitt Street. which is essentially for replacement of windows on the second floor of the house. If you could run us through your project. I know we were out there for a site visit to look at the condition of the windows, so thank you for having us out there. If you'd like to run through the application, just kind of walk us through it a little bit for the commission.
Jeff, you want to take this or you want me to?
Sure. Yes, so we're replacing 10 windows, basically on most of the dormers. This is an addition that was put on the house in about 20 years ago, early 1990s. These are Roscoe windows that were originally in the house. So we're replacing them. They're deteriorating, the sills are rotting. So our proposal is to replace them. They're currently on the dormer 6/6. Roscoe windows, we're proposing to replace them with 6/1 on the dormers, and they'll be Marvin windows, and we'll refurbish the sills.
What is the age of this house?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know.
Greek Revival. Do you know, Andrea?
I think while Andrea's looking that up, I think for the benefit of the commission, Ben, Tracy, and myself went out there for a site visit on Saturday to look at the condition of the windows. And they are much newer windows. I think it was 2001, around there when they were installed, from what I understand, and are in pretty rough shape. They're new windows. There's nothing historic about them in any way. So, in terms of repairing those, I don't know that this is a candidate for that, at least on what we saw out there. And I don't know if you have anything else different to add to that.
The only thing I would add is that the dormers, and Mr. Long can confirm this, the dormers were added in 2001, as well as the windows, all the dormers.
That's correct. It was part of an addition back then, so that's correct.
Mr. Chairman, the age of the house is 1851.
Thanks, Andrea.
Rick?
I'm just wondering where it's hard to see in the pictures a little bit, but all the first floor windows look like 6/6. Is that correct?
That's correct. So we're proposing on the dormers to essentially do 6/1, which would actually mirror the windows on the barn, the historic barn across the street from us.
What's the age of that?
Oh, it's Sally Weston's house, so I don't know the age of it, but it's quite old.
I didn't know 16/, well, the one part is what's worrying me. I don't know when a big pane of glass like that first came in to the States. Wouldn't that be a sort of end of the 1800s, early 1900s? I think of it as the craft era.
So Carol, I can tell you that I used to live in a house that was 1832 on Main Street that had basically 2/2, so still very, very big panels.
And they were original? That was the original
all
window?
the windows in that house were original, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hans, it looked like you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just, given that you were able to walk the property, Ben and Tracy and Mike, just your thoughts on breaking from the 6/6, kind of following on Carol's questioning.
Yeah,
Especially the one in the front that isn't a dormer. It's on the very front of the house, number 5, I guess that is.
Jeff, actually, you were on question of being a 6/6 on that one individual one, correct?
That's correct. So again, my wife and I have gone back and forth, but I think we would be fine leaving the front one 6/6 to match the 2 lower windows in the front.
Are the back ones visible from the street or any public way?
No.
Yeah.
Anybody
I
know?
wonder if a site visit makes sense.
You can see the windows on the dormers as you approach from the sides.
Mhm.
But, you know, as been stated, that addition was 2001. You know, so that's not a historic portion of the house. It was one of the things that jumped out at me as well, being there, because they have these inserts in them now, which are 6/6, but you can tell that they're attached, and it's not a real 6/6. I think if the front one, which is part of the original house, maintained 6/6, I would be okay with the other ones being simplified a little bit, which kind of helps differentiate what was an addition 20 years ago versus what's historic. But that's my take.
Is there an advantage to having 6/1? I mean, why was that a choice?
Just aesthetically, we prefer them, and we like the look of them on the barn across the street. We thought, because that's a mixture also of 6/6 and 6/1. So, and again, on the dormers on that old barn. So that's what we're trying to replicate, that look and feel.
Yeah, I have on my second screen, I have the street view up, and the barn across the street's absolutely beautiful. And it has two dormers on each side, and they are 6/1. And I would assume that those dormers were probably added at a later date as well. So.
Any thoughts on that? The 6/1 versus the 6/6?
Well, I have the same opinion that Tracy does. This is an addition, not original fabric. My only concern is the consistency. I mean, Mr. Long, do you have plans to replace the ones on the first floor at some point?
No, not at the moment, but if we did, we would leave those, again, 6/6 to match the one right above in your pictures.
So the 6/1 will differentiate the fact that it is a addition. I mean, more so than the fact that there's a dormer there.
You're saying the back part of the house is newer?
No, just speaking about the dormers
Just the dormers.
themselves, yes.
Because there are dormers also, 3 and 4, which are on the main part of the original house.
All the dormers are new. Those dormers that you see on both sides of the house were put in 2001 or whatever that date was.
So none of them are old.
None of them are old.
You know, I tend to agree. I think if you're able to keep the one on the front as 6/6, you know, to have those others as 6/1 on what is the newer portions of the structure, you know, I don't see that as being inappropriate.
You know, many of us had questions about the Lincoln Street house until we stood in the driveway and compared the house to where the barn is going to be and whether or not the little shed could be moved and so forth. Completely changed our minds about a bunch of things. And I'm wondering if maybe this would be a good site visit candidate to go kind of get a feel of the neighborhood looking. Keep talking about this house across the street. I can't picture what it is. There's no photo of it. Maybe we should all go stand there and look around.
Well, I think, and we had gone out, Tracy, Ben, and I, on a site visit on Saturday with the intent of looking at the condition of the windows, and whether they were historic or needed to be replaced, and you know, which is what our focus was. And I think the photographs that are presented here are pretty indicative of being there. I know it's not actually being there, but the photo number 4 that shows the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 windows, as well as the photo number 10, which shows windows 7 and 8, is pretty indicative of what's there standing on the sidewalk. And I think gives a good sense of the condition that exists.
And I think we had commission members that did do a site visit. I have looked at the Google Street View, and I can understand exactly what Tracy's talking about. The look of the one in the lower window, and it seems like a very reasonable compromise to have 6/6 on the older portion, and I would want to allow the homeowner to proceed. So I'm not a voting member on this item, but that I would tend to want to
Chairman?
allow.
Yes, Andrea?
Just as I'm looking at the house, it is it's just a lovely Greek Revival farmhouse type, as opposed to a formal Greek Revival. And looking at the front windows, they are very appropriate for they're long, they're narrower, and they're 6/6. On the front facade, the windows on the I can't see the windows on the side, but they all look shorter.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
The ones that are shorter, definitely.
You're talking about the dormer windows?
No, I'm just talking about on the main portion of the house, the original portion of the house. The windows right on the front facade are very appropriate for a Greek Revival. And, but it looks as though the windows on the side are shorter. Is that correct? 6/6?
No, they would all be the same on the ground floor. They would all be similar size as the 2 front ones you're seeing.
So they are the longer window, longer, narrower windows.
Correct, on the ground floor, on the
Okay.
historic portion.
Well, I would just have to say, my recommendation from an appropriateness standpoint, and I think, Carol, this is probably what you were trying to get at, is for a Greek Revival, it really is 6/6 and the narrower windows.
Mm-hmm.
Although these are, the windows I think we're talking about replacing, though, I think are the ones in the dormers on the second floor, which are shorter.
They're shorter, yeah.
They're shorter.
I guess my feeling on this is, while it sort of diverts from the original 6/6, there's something to be said for the lighter effect of a 6/1. It's going to have a little bit of a lighter feel to it because of you're not having all the muttons on the bottom. So I feel like I'm comfortable with the 6/1 because the dormer is so diminutive that it feels appropriate to the style of the dormer.
Yeah, just for reference, most of the dormer heights on those windows are around 44. I'm just looking at some of the measurements, 44 in height, 56 in height, and 52. 4 of them are at 44, 5 of them are, 9 of them at 44 inches. So, less than 4 feet in height.
Yeah.
Just for, a reference.
Okay, Hans?
Thanks, Mike. So on photo 10, I don't know if you've got all the photos in front of you, but on photo 10, you've got 6, 7, and 8 numbered, right? On the dormers on the second floor. And there is another dormer in the rear that looks like it's 6/6. Is that true? That you're not working on?
Right, correct. We're not changing that. The dormer on the right-hand side of the house, the farthest dormer to the back, we're doing any work to that one.
Yeah, so that one's gonna stay 6/6. Is there anything on the other side of the house that's gonna stay 6/6 on the second floor?
Not from the street view.
Are you, without the perspective of, I just have this photo perspective, any concern with leaving one 6/6 on the second floor and everything else being 6/1?
From the front, no. It does appear a little odd to me that you'd have two different style windows in a room, but I understand from an historic perspective that you'd leave that front upstairs window 6/6 for sure. So again, I don't have a concern with that, Hans.
I'm thinking about, so if we go 6/1 on windows 6, 7, and 8, and then in the rear we stay 6/6, for the consistency. Second floor on that dormer, that's the only thing that's scratching my head about.
So,
If we had to replace that small back dormer for a 6/1, that would be fine as well, just to have consistency.
in photo 7, if you look at photo 7, it shows it a little bit more straight on, that rear dormer window. It actually looks like like it doesn't open at all. It almost looks like a casement.
It cranks open from the bottom. It's a Marvin casement.
Okay. So it's not really 6/6.
Is it like a 9 light?
It's a 9. Yeah, it's a 9 light. It's a 9 light. And it opens from the bottom.
And
it's an awning window.
is there anything on the other side that's different from a 6/1?
There's two back windows that face out the back, out into the backyard, not visible from the street, that are 6/6.
Okay. How about on the rear L? I'm looking at number 4, picture number 4. So you got window number 1. How about on that peak on the L off the back? Is there what's that window? Is that a 6/6?
Is that the side? It's a side, right?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I can't even see it. It's up in the peak.
Yeah,
on
it's a
the second
6/6.
floor. Okay. All right.
Yeah, Hans, those are good. Those are really good observations. I think I'm in agreement with consistency with the two end gable windows. I think I'm sort of being swayed towards staying with the 6/6.
Are there any objections from the applicant to sticking with 6/6?
I guess I would prefer to, on the front one to leave 6/6 on that one you just described on the other peak, which faces the side of the house. If I had to leave that 6/6 and just do the dormers 6/1, that would be my preference. I generally like to do the dormers 6/1. If I can, even if I have to change that back dormer to 6/1, so you'd have 100% consistency on the dormers. That'd be my preference.
I think that rear dormer on photo number 7, I'm sure you'd get a 6/1 out of that size. It's just a really small window.
Small window.
So,
I guess one more addition, and maybe it is, to Carol's point, another site visit, but if you look at the barn across the street, which is probably older than my house, it has 6/6. It has, again, the 6/1 in the dormers. Pretty consistent with what I'm trying to do is very consistent with that.
Mr. Long, is the these are clip-in muttons?
No, they're Bros. They're not clip-in.
Oh, they're not clip-in. Okay. I was gonna say, are we?
They're true divided, single pane.
Okay.
I mean, it sounds like, and I know, Carol expressed interest in a site visit, and, in the interest of time, I want to be able to keep you moving. But, I'm not getting, a clear sense from the commission as to what would be most appropriate here, and maybe a site visit, with the entire commission would help clarify that decision. I don't know if you're open to that. I apologize. We were out there once.
No, of course.
Again.
That'd be fine.
Yeah. Okay. Hans?
Mike, I put a lot of weight on what, you and Ben and Tracy are saying here. You went out there, and there's definitely differentiation with these dormers. I just want to make sure that we're going to have 3 different window styles here, and I know you guys took a look at it, but if you're okay with it, I don't want to hold the applicant up either. I think we might be splitting hairs a little bit, but I just want to. I guess what I'm saying is I'm putting a lot of weight in what you guys are saying. You went out there, you took a look at this, and you came to the same conclusion.
Yeah, and personally, I don't think 6/1 is inappropriate. And if we're talking about appropriateness here, to me, I don't think 6/1 is inappropriate. I think it would be acceptable and appropriate in this case. You could argue a 6/6, for consistency, but in terms of appropriateness, and just my opinion, that 6/1, I think would be appropriate in this application. I'm not sure if Tracy and Ben, if you have any different thoughts than you had when we started the discussion.
No, I mean, it goes back to an earlier point I made. It is an addition, 20-year-old addition. The windows are shorter. There's precedent for it across the street. I think it's appropriate.
I'm comfortable with the way it's been presented, and the doghouse in the back, because it is not the back, but on the right towards the back, because it is in fact a doghouse, and what's in there now is a 9-light and not a double hung. I would call that, I don't know, quaint, campy, cute. It's what you get with homes this age.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Long, may I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
Mr. Long, is that the Schillings Barn that you're talking about? Across the
No,
street?
it's one closer. It's Sally Weston's barn. It's that white barn.
Oh, okay. All right. On Jones Street. I understand.
It's not on Jones. It's still on Leavitt, but
Oh, that's right. But her address is 5 Jones.
yeah, she's sitting in Jones. The barn is on Leavitt.
Okay. Yes, of course. Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome.
I think I'm comfortable deferring to the members who, were at the site visit.
Thanks. Carol or Robert, anything else to add?
No?
Okay, well, I think, it sounds like we might be in a position here to make a motion. I think what I'm hearing is generally that 6/1 on the dormers is appropriate, without speaking for the commission, of course, in general. But that I think that 6/6 on that front elevation would remain.
And the side as well, the side gable?
I would be fine leaving the side gable as well.
Okay. So I think it sounds like we're at a point where we can make a motion. To clarify, voting members on this hearing will be myself, Hans, Carol, Catherine, and Ben. So with that, would anybody like to make a motion?
I can do it, Mike.
Thanks, Hans.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion for 115 Leavitt Street to replace 10 existing windows based on photographs 1 through 10 and windows labeled 1 through 10 on the upper dormers of 115 Leavitt Street. Cut sheets provided are Marvin, simulated divided light windows, all wood. Cut sheets are 4 pages, 3 of 6, 3 pages, 3, 4, 5. I guess 3, 4, 5, and some details on the last sheet, but there's 4 pages in total that were submitted. Trim sashes to match existing. The front window on the front facade of the Greek Revival farmhouse to remain 6/6. That is window number 5. The other window that was discussed on the rear L towards the left of the house to remain, and that's a 6/6. No work done on that. And I'm taking from the discussion that the rear window on the right side, which is a 9-light window, doghouse configuration to remain also. No work to be done on that. Did I miss anything?
I think you got it. Is there a second?
Second.
Ben? Okay, Hans, how do you vote?
Oh, did I mention 6/1? Just say 6/1 after all that discussion. Make sure that's in there. All windows to be 6/1. I vote aye.
Carol, how do you vote?
I vote no.
Catherine, how do you vote?
Oh, yes.
Ben, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And myself, aye. Thank you. You
Thank you
passed.
very much. Thank you.
Mike, not
Thank you.
not to complicate anything, Mike, but Hans at the end there through all 6/1. Was the front window still 6/6 or 6/1? Sorry.
Yep, sorry about that. 6/1 in the front,
No,
or 6/6 in the front.
in the front.
6/6, yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Hey, thank you, guys.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Have a good night.
You too.
okay. Next hearing is 6771 North Street.
Hey, guys.
How are you?
There he is.
Doing
Hi,
well.
Patrick.
Welcome back.
Here we are again.
All right. Why don't you walk us through your proposal? Essentially, this is replacing one of the rear L's with a new addition.
Yeah, so really just ultimately finalizing what we had spoke about in our prior submission, I think back in late 2017, and being true to our word that we were ultimately going to get some symmetry and finish the addition on the rear left portion of the building, if that makes sense. And also including just some of the windows that were not addressed in the previous application. You know, and going through, I guess, first and foremost, you know, the documentation and exhibits, you know, site plan, of course. We have the existing elevations here, and I think I might turn it over to Gabe to discuss, you know, what exists at the moment and the changes that we'll be making.
Yeah, so back in 2017, we put the second story on the, if you're facing the building from the back, if you're looking at the proposed, if you're looking at the existing drawing, now you see the right side, the roof elevation goes up into the front roof. Originally, it also had a low second floor, which was like a 6'2" ceiling height. And in 2017, we raised the roof and the elevation of the ceiling in that room and put a more traditional dormer on the back. In or around 1942, they put these two bump outs in the rear of this building and just added a very minimal like shed roof over just to get enough space. And they just jammed rooms into open space and put bathrooms in areas that it's not even technically habitable, but that's how the structure was when we came into it. So in 2017, we rectified the situation on the right side. And now we spoke about potentially doing this when we did that proposal, but now we're proposing to make the left side similar to the right side. So the whole building will have a nice consistent view. And also that second floor will be more, you know, usable or legally usable actually.
And just moving along, you know, we have the proposed elevations. I guess we can start with whichever you prefer, A1 or A2.
Mr. Chairman, I don't seem to have these plans. I'm not sure if they weren't in my packet or what, so I might have to sit this one out.
Do you have access to the website? If you look on the agenda, there's a website that you can go to the link and find documents there if you want.
Thank you.
If you can't, then let me know. But hopefully you'll be able to find those there as backup.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Catherine, if you don't have them, that's my fault.
No, could it be me? COVID, blame it on COVID.
We'll stand by.
Okay, I think I'm there. Yes, okay.
Okay, guys.
Okay, yep, I got it. Thank you.
Perfect. All right, let's keep going.
Awesome. So,
Go ahead, Pat.
yeah. In A2, I guess we can start with the front right and proposed back elevations. You know, in an effort to try and make it look as symmetrical as we possibly could without grossly overextending the rear addition. You know, there's a little, I guess, extension of the right side of the existing, it's listed as 3 feet towards the middle of the house. I'm doing a terrible job explaining this.
All right, so because the right side of the back of the building was so large, when we came to the left side, it was super narrow. And what we did is cantilever the second floor into the space, I'm talking about the back of the house, but into the space between the two units so that we could create a little outside storage, because there's no sheds and no barns and there's no place to put anything like shovels, snow blowers, or anything like that on the property. So we thought the best use of that space in between the two additions out the back would to be create a little covered storage that would all marry into the overall design of the building.
Which are illustrated on sheet A1, the three-dimensional picture in the bottom right-hand corner.
So if you look at that, a little indentation, we left the doors off on purpose. It'll have a traditional barn-style door on it to cover it up, but basically that's exterior storage that's just being created by that cantilever on the second floor, which does two things. It gives us a little more square footage on the second floor, but it also makes the two additions in the back seem more proportional.
And so you said there will be a door there?
Yes. Yeah, that's going to be kind of closed-in covered story with like a traditional wood barn door just on hinges.
Can I just ask a quick question? The reason for the overhang is because you're not doing any work in the existing kitchen on the first floor, and you're just trying to expand the space on the second floor?
Right. We're going to expand the living space on the second floor. We need exterior storage. There's no space on the lot for any sort of a barn or shed or anything that would make any visual sense. So we stuck with the original foundation plan, and we're just going to put an exterior on the outside corner so that we can marry the design on that first floor, create, but then also cloak the storage in a very uniform.
So to make the second floor functional without impacting the foundation to a huge degree or have to redo the kitchen, that's why you're proposing this overhang, correct?
Yeah, and aesthetically, if you go up 2 stories at 6 wide, it looks really strange.
Okay.
So making it a little wider looks aesthetically pleasing from the back of the building.
Okay.
And I guess address.
I'm sorry, I just had a question. Did you say that you were going to put a door on the overhang, or were you going to leave it open?
I was going to put a traditional barn-style door in there on hinges, just so it's not
on something that opens up towards you, or something that slides?
I would know, just a double hinge door. So it'd be 2 barn doors on hinges that open.
Okay. Okay.
There's some mechanical stuff in there, that space that really isn't 100% usable anyway. So we're just trying to maximize what we're doing and minimize the aesthetic detriment to the property.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess in the documents in exhibit, we had the differentiation between the existing and proposed structure. The main highlights being this addition is for unit 67, and bring the ceiling height up to code. Going to be removing a lot of rotted wood has made portions of the roof structurally deficient. Replace the remaining windows that were not addressed in the application for certificate of appropriateness in April of 2020, and remove a non-historic flat A-frame roof, replaced with a gable that was more symmetrical. New materials to match the existing details. That will include the same cedar shingles that we had used on the right addition previously approved by the HDC. The same historic gray paint previously approved by the HDC. The same 6-panel doors, so on and so forth. Are happy to continue going in detail, and then showed some of the existing photographs, which wanted to make sure I showed off the lawn. And then page 8 of the documentation and exhibit identifies 5 windows, actually 4 of which that will be replaced, 1 that will be deleted, and 1 that will be added. And you can kind of see the deletion and the addition in the middle, the picture in the middle. If that makes sense.
And that picture in the middle is where this overhang sort of structure is being proposed.
Correct. Yes,
Yep.
correct.
And you've got, if I'm looking at sheet A2, proposed right elevation, that window, the bottom right window looks like almost square, 2/2. That is replacing one that's there, right? Which looks like it's some sort of casement.
I hate to say it, that is that's an error. That's over the kitchen sink.
That's just going to stay.
That's
the
going
same.
to stay the same.
There's no change to that existing window.
Okay.
It's just it's drawn wrong in the elevation drawing.
Okay. And then, so the other 2, the one on the first floor to the left of it is being replaced. Or is that staying the same?
That one was addressed in the application in
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So basically,
And then similarly, as you turn the corner to the front elevation, that one is pretty okay.
Yep.
All right.
So these are the remaining windows that weren't included because we were going to propose this. So basically, the whole building is now going to be consistent with the windows that have been approved.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I've gone through all the material.
Yeah, we also brought this to zoning to see if they were going to require us to go through a zoning exemption, and the building department, and they've actually already given us a quiet nod saying as we get through this, they're already okay, so we don't have to go through a second zoning approval. So as far as the town goes, I think they're ready to see everything be repaired and protected.
We can file and go get permits as we have historic approval.
Okay. All right, Ben?
Let's see, I have a couple of questions, just confirmation. The existing foundation, the projection towards the backyard, that's not changing?
Correct.
And then this recess that's on the inside, I see that it's an L recess in terms of the trim. And so you're gonna hang a door without any trim to the right. Are you suggesting?
There'll probably be a physical trim side on the right side when I go to mount the door. So that would
Okay.
it would be a matching. It'll be a traditional looking barn door.
So there'll be a short wall there, Gabe, to hang the. Okay.
Yep, mounted to the existing. Yeah.
Okay, and then the width of the foundation. When I take a look at the existing, the width of the foundation isn't changing, correct?
Right. Right. So the width of the foundation is 12. And with that hangover or overhang on the second floor is going to add 3 feet to that, which, like I said, when you go up 2 stories and then add a roof to something 12 feet wide, it becomes incredibly narrow. So all of this kind of pulled together into aesthetic and function at the same time. That's why we added the overhang and then put the storage underneath it.
So the width of the foundation will change in size.
The width of the foundation won't. We're going to hang the structure over 3 cantilever, and then we're going to bring a column down in the front. So you might have a footing at 3 feet out, but other than that, that whole wall is kind of going to be like a wall. It's going to hang and just protect this. It's like a shed where you just have a footing, and that's just going to cover the outside storage.
Okay, all right, so on A1, lower right-hand corner of A1, that corner board on the right-hand side,
Yep.
you're
That-
saying there's a pier underneath that?
Yeah, there's probably going to be a footing there just so that that corner can have rigidity.
Okay, all right. But it's gonna be all one facade. There's not gonna be additional openings there. It's not a post, it's a post in frame, but otherwise it's all enclosed by, it's cladded, right? There's siding.
It's all gonna, and yeah, exactly. So that's what we try to do is disguise the storage and the outside part of this into the overall aesthetic of the building.
Okay, then if I could jump to A2, upper right-hand corner, proposed right elevation. It looks like you're starting, maybe it's a perspective, but it looks like you're starting a hip roof. I'm not sure how that connection is being made.
Yeah, so to keep the existing roof with as much symmetry as possible, if you look at the A4 drawing and you look at the right side coming down into the low slope roof, you have a fairly formal right side coming down that that rake. And so if you did a traditional roof kind of to match a gable end, you ended up cutting off some of that symmetry of that side. So by turning that into a hip roof, it knocks the addition back and makes the addition more subtle so that you have the original structure of the main building as the prominent design feature. So we knocked the roof back so that it would not be invasive to the original symmetry of the building as much as possible.
But you still need a pass-through for that third floor of the main volume.
That attic won't have access. If anything, it would be dead storage. That you won't get a pass-through. There's not enough elevation height. So you get full second floor, but the attic might be for mechanicals or something, but it won't be anything else inside there. That's why knocking that hip back protects the view of the front of the house and that right side, as opposed to if you put additional gable rake down that side, then you'd see a diagonal of sidewall shingles from the front of the street.
Yeah, I'm just not, I'm not certain I'm understanding how that's gonna present itself from the street. I mean, I see your proposed front elevation and it looks good, but as I travel towards the water,
yeah,
you're going to expose a lot more of that, and I understand what you're trying to accomplish there, but it's becoming awkward.
Okay.
Um,
So if you look on A1, there is a 3D that kind of bends around that corner a little bit.
A1. Okay, yep.
And so we did initially draw that. If you look at the roof structure in that 3D on the upper right, we did initially draw that as sidewall shingles, but having that triangle sidewall going up took away from the symmetry of that right side of the building.
Sure.
Really didn't like the way it presented from the main street. So when you blend it into the roof shingles, it's all going to die back into the background. And we can get you guys a rotation view in 3D so it will make more sense.
Yeah, I think that's certainly going to be helpful for me because you're going to have a flat section of wall at some point, right underneath the connector to the main volume. Again, back to A2, upper right-hand corner. You're going to have what appears to be shingles.
It's drawn as like kind of a gambrel roof section in that area. So if you change the elevation of the roof twice, it will all become shingles and blend visually and disappear. Instead of putting a vertical wall and shingles up there, if you just imagine a gambrel roof with two different roof pitches.
Oh, okay. I see what you've done.
And
right.
It'll disappear from the street.
And you'll have the same roof line.
Yeah.
The house.
Yeah. I'm questioning the same. I'm still trying to figure that out too. And I'm looking, I've got the image from the website on my computer screen here just to see if I can see it in better clarity and, you know, where that at the proposed right elevation, which I know it's a flat elevation, but the portion that looks like an upside down triangle is the part that I'm struggling
So
with.
what that's going to be is just a little bit
It
steep
looks like it's going to be,
roof pitch,
yeah.
right? It's going to be roof shingles. So visually from the street and as you drive by, it's all going to look like roof shingles. So if you turn that, so you have a choice. You either turn, if you look at A1, you either turn the triangle that's black at the top right of that addition to shingles, or you turn the A2, that upside down triangle, to shingles. And instead of doing sidewall shingles up there, if you pitch the roof back, you get a nice slope, and then it's all going to blend in with the color of roof, and you won't be able to pick up on anything different.
Yeah. I just, it feels like you're adding 3 different roof styles then. So you've got a gable, you have a hip, and now you have a gambrel.
Hey, maybe we can chalk this up to being quirky.
Within the roof shingles. Well, it's all in the plane of the roof shingles. So
Yeah.
visually, you'll never be able to discern. It's not like you see a rake that's a gambrel. It's basically just a cut valley that's going to actually function to visually hide this discontinuity that was made when they moved this addition in 1942 off to the side of the building.
Right. No, I understand the conundrum here.
So can I interrupt and ask, so I'm looking at sheet A2, and I think I understand the geometry that you're talking about. And so it's that little upside down triangle as it's depicted on A2. Right? It's not a vertical surface. It's going to be at roofed shingles. And I'm wondering, just to help my own visualization, where would rainwater? It looks like a lot of rainwater would focus down onto that lower peak.
Yeah, the valley would end at the bottom of the rake of the main house. So it's all going to come out into that, what would be a hip roof as it's drawn now, but be out over that window. So it's all going to collaborate into that one spot, but it's not actually that big of a spot. In reality, we're really only talking about something that's like 10 feet wide at the top and 6 feet in height. So you're really, if anything, you're looking at like 30 square feet, which isn't going to produce a lot of rain.
Right. But I think it's the depiction on A2 that's sort of doing the notion disservice, I guess.
Yeah, well, again, it is a conundrum, and we've looked at it both ways in 3D.
We thought it looked better with shingles instead of siding.
Yeah, there's just no way to blend siding in and raise a wall elevation up to make it simple. We could run that instead of making that second roof line. Like I said, once it's shingled, you won't actually see that triangle line. It'll all just be the gray of the shingles, and it's all going to blend. But if that created a problem, we could run the hip on that side all the way up to the ridge and remove that line and just change the pitch of that section of roof, and it would all just be roof shingles, and you won't get, there will be no possibility of that.
I think I'm mentally counting that as quirky.
Well, if you didn't turn that as a hip,
Yep.
and it was, just pitch there, and you had siding above that window, does that?
So what happens there is, because the rake of the front comes in, if you run that siding up and you run that rake up, you have roof shingles that actually go up above, behind the building, up above the existing roof. So you get into a different quagmire of like just weirdness, where the original right side of that building comes down into sidewall that then kicks back out onto that little section, because that roof elevation, that front triangle, it just looks really weird. And it looked weird in 3D because you have a roof coming down like this and then a sidewall that goes up and over the roof like that if you do a traditional rake, because you're coming up from 4 feet past the building or 6 feet past the building, and you're going to be up at like 2 feet above the roof. So then that whole main roof sheds into sidewall.
Yeah, it's definitely a quirky spot. I think the solution is, it'd be nice to see some other studies of this area, and maybe this is ultimately, the right solution, but I feel like, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I feel like there's got to be a better way of doing this.
I think you're trying to say you don't want it to look crazy from the street.
Yeah, so again, I'm gonna have Pat pull up. I might have the plans where we issued, where it was done the original way, and then you guys can kind of see how that roof transition into the existing is definitely different.
Could you explain again why just having the gable fade right into the main house is a problem?
Because by the time you come from 6 feet off the right side of the main house at a 5 pitch, you're 22 inches above the bottom of the roof. So then that line has to continue above the roof, and the main roof for the next 4.5 or 5 feet to the center of the pitch would shed into sidewall, and it looks really weird.
I think I can share my screen with everyone. Is that okay?
Yeah, Sherry will.
Yeah, just give me 1 second. I'll make you co-host so you can do that. Let's see.
This is the other solution that was even remotely possible, but it changes the front right of the house. So to avoid the problem, you have to square up the front back right.
That was the first pass.
Great.
Everyone see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we didn't like the way that looked. I think there was nothing.
You lose the symmetry of the original structure in that.
And the pitch of the roof of the original structure.
Yeah, you essentially create an eave.
Now, I will say this, to do that is actually easier than to do the hip roof, but architecturally this bothered me, so I stopped here. And we went in another direction until I could get it to something that made me believe that we had the best solution.
So this kind of connection we've certainly seen before. You're right. I mean, you lose the rear line of the original volume.
Correct.
Do you have any other views of the proposed right elevation that might help?
I would call this a more traditional connection given the circumstances.
If I can just offer this up, on our house, we have something similar to the drawing you just had up as a connection.
And I think on 8 Pond Street, we just had a connection similar to this.
Yep. So this is how the rear L was configured to going into that gable with an extension coming out. It's very similar.
Like I said, this is easier for me to build. I felt like I wanted to protect the symmetry of the original structure, so I sought out another solution.
So in the addition, that would all be siding. You got that the bump out, which you said is that 6 feet, the bump out?
Hang on. Tough to say. It's probably like 4.5 feet, just based off the scale, because it's 12 feet overall, and we have about, it's like 4.5 feet that bump out is.
So 4.5 feet, and there's no window on the second floor in the 4.5 feet?
There is.
No,
there
is.
If you look at the proposed with the.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So then that would get filled, and then the rest is siding.
The rest is siding, yeah. And if you go back and forth between the two, you can kind of see how this, like I said, changes the symmetry, makes it feel more blocky. And if you throw the hip roof in there, it just melts back. But that's my opinion. And again, I'm always willing to do more work to do what I think is right. But if you guys are telling me something else is more traditional and it's easier for me, I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot. But I believe that the hip roof is going to make everything kind of transition smoothly and melt that addition back into the background of the house and leave the original traditional house that was built in 1760 and not the 1942 addition. I'd rather leave the weight on the history of the building.
Well, I can say that hip roof, what's nice is you have an eave line there. And if you could put an eave line on the more traditional connection, that would break up the siding. So the window that's not there in that particular drawing, the window would be there directly above it. You could do an eave line there, right? Nothing too substantial, but it would basically make that triangle above, it would give it a little more.
Then what do you do with the right side of the original house to connect to that? You still leave that weird triangle above it?
Well, I'm probably not explaining very well, but if you go back to your hip roof design, you'll see that there is an eave directly above it. I'm not suggesting that this is a utilitarian eave that you would put on here. This would be more of an aesthetic eave. It's just breaking up the siding.
Yeah, I understand. You're talking about creating kind of like a pigeon rest or a false return for the roof, and then you're going to have like 3 courses of shingles above it. But what do you do with the original house?
Sorry, I lost you. You're breaking up.
So if you there's a box line on the drawing up on the screen right now. So if you look at the line, can you see the mouse moving here? This line?
Yes. Yes.
So if we put a false like shadow box in to create a roof line there, what happens here? Do we now bring this down to connect to that and have a strange triangle here, or do we leave this all sidewall and just return here? You're creating a line that doesn't actually connect to anything. Yes, it returns and breaks up the shingles on that one side, but it lacks the connection to the original building, which is why I moved away from that.
Right. No, what I suggest is that it would just be an eave line that would tie into the side of the original volume and not change what you have here in the picture above, which creates a connection.
I'm sorry?
So again, this is less work for me than the hip roof. So if this is a solution that makes the majority of you happy, then I'm more than willing to do that. I can update the drawing, not a problem.
So could you just show the hip one more time? So I have to say, I think that looks great. But as I travel closer to the water or go right of the house, I think eventually I'm going to be presented with something that will look unusual or awkward, that connection. I'm going to see multiple pitched roof lines. You're right. The fact that it's all the same material will help make it disappear. And as a builder, these are the things I focus on.
Yeah, like I said, I can make that disappear entirely by extending the hip all the way up to the ridge and then having just one slope that will read as shingles in there. So you won't see a second line. And then aesthetically, you get a more appealing front, and that valley that we're just creating an elongated valley in between. It will look well intended because it will just be exiting water.
Not to mention that I really hate losing that original roof line of the original structure. I realize this is going to be more difficult and thus, more costly, but,
I'm going to yield my time.
ownership thing here.
Would any other commission members want to weigh in on this?
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, Hans.
It's just from this one vantage point, it's tough to make a decision one way or the other. It'd be nice to see some other perspectives on this, one coming down the street and maybe one directly on the side. It would just be helpful, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is just on the, I don't know if this is visible from the street, but on A1, the overhang that you're creating here, I don't know if there's a way to bring that whole wall down and just extend the building, but, and I don't know if that's visible from the street, but if it is visible from the street, I wouldn't call that appropriate.
What are we talking about? I'm confused.
He's talking about the bump out with the cantilever.
A1.
On the bottom right?
Yeah.
I believe that's visible from Ship Street, correct?
You have to be directly in behind the building basically to see that.
Yeah, if you wanted to bring that wall all the way up, I don't know what that would require on the foundation and if it would just be a slab, but that might be a solution to that. Or, you know, that's some type of false wall there or something. But if it's visible from the street, I think we need to take a closer look at it.
If there was a door there, does that change your mind, or is that you still feel the same there? The barn doors that they're proposing.
You know, a very large door.
Yeah.
Yeah, in reality, I'd probably close the opening down to something that's like 8 feet wide. So you'd have 2 4-foot doors that just close on each other and open.
And then maybe have some storage in there or something.
I got nowhere to keep my snow blower
Yeah.
for snow removal in the winter, and it's getting rusty.
I think if you can eliminate that overhang, and I think that would be something that would be.
So maybe we just need to see the picture with the doors in.
Yeah. And the other thing is on the rear, I don't know if it's possible to, or if you've looked at doing a study with maybe 2 windows over the door, if there's enough room there on A2.
Yeah, let me just peek at what the second floor is. That's just a bedroom.
Yeah, it's just a bedroom instead of just 1 window over the door. Maybe that makes it a little bit more balanced versus the L on the right.
Are you saying over the, what are we calling that? The barn door?
Or are you talking about on the side that faces the actual back?
A2, you've got a door on the bottom left, right? This is on the bump out we're talking about.
Sure.
And then having maybe 2 windows on the second floor if there's enough room instead of just 1.
So you may, in the end, have a window in the walk-in closet.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that room is configured, but on my drawing on the bedroom on the second floor, it looks like it's wide open space on A1.
So it's back here.
And the windows would have to be the same size as as the windows on the right bump out.
Yeah, everything's.
That's some feedback.
I went on mute.
Okay, I got to turn my amp down. I'm just kidding you. Yeah, so I don't know if there's enough room up there for 2 windows, but that might be an interesting study.
So you have 15 feet overall. Yeah, I mean, you can fit it.
Yeah, I guess there's 2 windows on the thing with the 2 windows on the right side, that's actually 2 bedrooms. One's unit 71, one is unit 69. I don't know if squeezing 2 windows there might look tacky.
Yeah, it might be good to take a look at it. I'm not sure how it would look, but it's kind of it might add a little bit of width to that building. It's kind of what I'm thinking about. That's all.
We can certainly provide the option.
Okay. Anything else, Hans? Okay. Anybody else have any comments or thoughts about this one?
Yeah, I'd like to say a few things. I think I agree with Hans, or I guess it was Ben, who said that seeing a couple of studies on that front and side elevation on the addition would be helpful, side by side on the same sheet, so we can really take a look at that. In the meantime, we can maybe do a walk by and see what is actually visible from the lower elevation, because the way the house is set up quite a bit, and maybe that roof is going to completely disappear once you're down low. It's hard to really imagine, and I'm not sure what's to the right of that building, but I think I need to drive by and take a peek and see how that roof line would be perceived as you're coming towards downtown from North Street. Because I agree that hip is more appealing from the front. It does register as the main antique home being more prominent. It keeps that gable really intact, which I like, and I think is preserving the original structure in a more mindful way. So I think that would be helpful. And as far as the overhang goes in the back for the storage shed, I think it would be really helpful to see what doors you plan to put there, and how it sits. It's a little strange to have oversized doors going into like a living quarters. So if it's like barn style, it's a little confusing because it's a house and not a, I don't know, it just feels a little quirky. So I'd like to see what that looks like.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. Carol or Robert?
Nope, nothing to say.
Just real quick. Again, I always look at these things on the Google Street View since we're all home. You have a beautiful sky on your Google Street View. You should take a look at it. I think what's being proposed is a positive compared to what's there. Do we know when that addition was made originally?
1940s.
1940s. You know, I think a roof plan might be helpful. I think Ben's brought up some good points, and you know, I understand Catherine's interest in keeping that strong gable, as well as yours, Patrick.
Thank you.
You know, but it does make for kind of a quirky condition if you do the hip. Are you planning on re-siding the addition, or?
Correct. 100%.
Re-side it.
Yep. It's the shingles are in disrepair, especially on the interior side between the two additions and on the rear of the building.
What about the side of the original house?
So we were able to get away with painting this the side of the original house on Ship Street, and actually, you know, came out really nice. Obviously, with the cedar shingles that we need to get, you know, really only looking to replace the shingles on the addition, and paint and try and kick the expenditure down the road a bit.
Yeah. No, the only reason I ask is because, like, currently that 1940s addition is built to kind of blend into the original house, and I don't know if this is an opportunity to kind of differentiate the fact that there is a addition to the historic portion of the house, and you do that with a different siding or a different color or something like that. But to really help the historic portion of the house really stand out, in a not really stand out, but to differentiate between the two. And I see on the other side, you know, because that elevation is more contiguous, it kind of does blend in, and it makes more sense. But because this is bumping out 4.5 or 6 feet, whatever it is, it might be an opportunity to just say, hey, this is something different. This is not historic. This is new, or newer. Might be something that could be explored a little bit. But generally, I think what you're proposing is a lot better than what's there now with that weird flattish roof, and understanding that that second floor isn't functioning right now. I concur with other members of the committee of wanting to see more detail on what that barn door would be and things like that. Those are my 2 cents.
Okay. Thanks, Tracy. Okay, well, I think, in general, it sounds like, there's a lot of positive feedback here. I think that the proportions of the new addition really do a nice job at making this more appropriate for where that is. I think so. What I'm hearing is that we'd like to see some more views of the side so we can see what those roof options look like. I think it would be good to see the sort of the gable option with that second floor window on that small side, similarly to what the other option is, the hip roof. Taking another look at potential window elevation options on the rear facing, maybe 2 windows as opposed to 1. I think take a look at that. And then showing some more information about that barn door, the size, what it might look like on that storage area side. I think this would also be the opportunity to just update the elevation that shows that rear kitchen window that's going to remain. And I think that summarizes the comments. So I think you're almost there. I think if we can take a look at some of those other things at the next hearing, I think we should be in a good place.
Mind if I ask a question?
Sure.
Instead of reinventing the wheel, is there a recently approved barn door or another application for a certificate of appropriateness that was approved that we can just copy and paste? Find something that is historically allowable or something that the board finds is appropriate?
Yeah, I mean, I think the style is pretty standard. I mean, I think there's lots of acceptable options out there. I think, I think in this scenario, I think it's more going to be about the width and the height, sort of proportions of the door, based on what Catherine was suggesting.
I'll take care of that. That's not a problem.
Yeah, I think it's really the width and the height. I think that's most important. I think the style is pretty simple, and I would suggest that it be sort of kept fairly simple, just for the fact that it is kind of on the side. It's not really a barn.
Yeah.
What you're trying to do there with storage, I just try to keep it as simple as you can.
Yep, no problem.
I was gonna go driving by barns in town.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Orders. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated.
Okay. Okay. On to 100 Main Street. Thank you for your patience. Sorry we're running a little bit late.
Thanks for volunteering. I appreciate everybody's time.
And so we understand that you're proposing a new fence, a couple of different types, it looks like, based on the application. So why don't you walk us through what your proposal is?
Yeah, and is it possible to share a screen? That way I can follow through with what you're looking at?
Sure. I'm going to make you co-host, and then you can do that. Be all set. Okay, you should be able to do it.
No, it's not appearing like it wants to let me. So give me a second and I might.
Okay.
Well, it's not allowing me to, but I will walk you through it. How's that sound, team?
That's good.
All right, so if the first slide is just obviously a picture from the street, so that's Main Street. Between us and downtown is the Old Ship Church, so to kind of orient you to where we are in town. The second slide is done by Cavanero, and it just gives you an overall layout of what the plan is. So in blue, the square, you can see the pool that's there currently. If you look on the Main Street side, there's an existing fence that comes from the main house to the property line opposite of Ship Church, and then all the way back to what is a rock wall. Okay. If you go to the third slide, you see the proposal. So the green line is a fence that is effectively hidden in unmaintained forest. So it's just up on a hillside. You really don't see this even from our property line, but it would just extend from the existing fence and then turn and meet the carriage house to the left. That fence, we're proposing to do what we have here as a picture on the right, which is a simple wood post with a wire and a tension wire. So it's, very out of view. It's the most transparent fence I think we could kind of find. And there's several examples of it in town, as you've seen. The one on the left, the red line, goes from the carriage house alongside the walkway and then adjoins the house. The example of it here is just the standard 6-foot aluminum, a little bit classier fence that would greet you as you enter the back of the house. All right. Slide number 4 is just new fence description. Just explains it a little more detail, the length, the height. We would use New England Woodworkers as our contractor for this. All right, and number 5 is just a comment and a picture from Emily from zoning. You can see the red arrow points to our lot. If you look to the left, you see, I think it's denoted as 68R. That's actually the bell tower. And then 90 is Old Ship Church. So with this color, it's actually not a public walkway that goes up here. The green would be the cemetery, and it is considered a public walkway, but Old Ship is actually it's private property. People do occasionally walk up here, as you're all aware of. And one more slide is 6. This is just going all the way into the first image on the left is sort of near the bell tower looking at our gray house, you can see, and then the yellow house to the left is the Dziergowski's house. So you really can't see the yard from that because of the hill. And then the image on the right is, you can see the pink land markers. That's the edge of my property line. To the left would be my property line, and you can only see the roof of the 3rd story of my home.
John, may I ask a question? It's Carol.
Hey, Carol.
Your property goes up to the top of the hill and then where the land becomes flat going into the cemetery?
Yeah, essentially
it doesn't stop at the top of the hill.
It doesn't. If you look at that pink marker in the picture to the right, that's actually the corner post. It's probably, a few inches from the fence.
And I'm trying to visualize this, having spent a lot of time next door, but you get to the top of the ridge behind your house, and then how far back is it to your property line?
From the top of the hill that you're looking at to the property line, it's probably another 75 feet. It's quite a ways.
It is quite a ways. I had no idea. Wow.
Unused land, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and then
your neighbors don't have that, do they?
They do. Yeah, the Dziergowskis do as well. Yeah, they have a big deep lot. Yeah.
I never knew that. Wow.
A lot of wood ticks for the kids to run into.
Yeah.
But the next picture as well is just picture from a few weeks ago of the front of the house, and you can sort of see through the arbor to the rock wall into the forest, kind of above the rock wall where the wood wire fence would go.
Mm-hmm. Would it be possible for the wood wire fence to have the post either stained darker or even painted a dark color?
Yeah.
I know the fencing's invisible, but the post's still standing there.
I wrote that in my description as an idea. We could just take a a black stain, because I have the same idea you do. I just don't want to see it. And it's high enough up on the hill where you don't, but if the posts were stained black, then it would be almost completely invisible, which is our preference as well.
Or a dark wood color.
Yeah, just like a transparent black or something, espresso.
Andrea, is the cemetery considered public realm, public view?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a trust, yeah.
John, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just for clarification, so the fence in the back that's proposed as wire with a wooden post, that little L corner where it goes into your existing fence, is that what heights the fence right there? Is it shrubs? Is it trees? Is it behind a wall or?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's right where the rock wall starts, and it's a bunch of natural shrubs. There's a bunch of stumps, and it's overgrown right there. So in fact, the people putting the fence in are going to have to do a little bushwhacking to put that in right there. So you don't see that.
And so in the wintertime, even with the leaves falling off and stuff like that, this would not be anything that would be very visible.
The only section you would see would be about a 10-foot section from my carriage house to the right, which I would see from the back of my house. Everything else, there's a bunch of mature trees that actually will go behind those. There's a few maples, I think 3 of them.
Okay.
So it's quite a ways back. If I can't go any further back, because then it would have an odd angle to the carriage house, but it's not visible really.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, Andrea, that the public viewing is only from the cemetery. It's not from the bell tower driveway or any of the area around the bell tower.
Well, I do, I have to disagree with Emily. We have always, because the bell tower belongs to the town. It's a public building and public access. So we've always looked at it as a public way.
Yeah, that's why we want to put a nice looking fence on that side, like Andrea's advice before. So.
I'm going to jump in with a comment on the north fence, and I understand the motivation to try and make it as invisible as possible. And it is really quite far from Main Street, and perhaps it's visible from the cemetery. But I worry a little bit about painting the posts black. I understand the motivation, but thinking about how undeveloped and woodsy and wood-ticky that area is, wouldn't maybe natural wood left to weather start looking perhaps like a tree stump rather than a black fence post? I know that's a little bit of a stretch, but
yeah, we're indifferent. I think it's the first year or so as it weathers, right? But then at that point, it looked normal. Yeah,
right. The picture with a fresh wood, it really does stand out. But my guess is that would fade and weather and become more woodsy looking.
Yeah, we're indifferent.
Another quick question, if you please. So you're planning on keeping the fence on the south side of the property for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, everything's good there. It's in decent condition. No issue. The gate, we took the gate off, but it needs to go back on. I have to put a latch and a spring-loaded hinge on it just for the pool, but it'll be the same. But yeah, nothing changing there.
Okay.
Needs a little bit of paint, that's all.
So I'm just thinking of the 3 different styles. Was there a particular reason you wanted to go with the metal fence on the north side? versus something that would match the other side?
Yeah, we talked about that. I think with a white wood fence there, it would just really feel like you're boxed in the backyard. That was the initial thought, is have something more transparent that's a little less noticeable but still looks classy, was the thought. And then there's the risk of a heavy wooden gate there to enter the house with guests. And
Right, because you have to go through the gate to get to the back door. Is that right?
correct, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but we come out the garage, we can obviously go in without the gate, but yeah, if people were visiting us, they'd use the gate.
So I guess I have a little bit of let's hear what the other commission members think about the 3 different styles of fence there. And I actually did it a few times because you kind of have to crane your neck to when you're up in the bell tower driveway area to really peer down into it's quite sunken there. It's a big difference in the elevation. So you're kind of looking down into your yard. So it all is visible. Maybe not the north side fence, but the pool and the other things are pretty visible.
Yep.
You do have to go out of your way a little bit to
Yeah.
go. It's not in your face.
It's definitely nosy neighbor territory.
It's nosy neighbor territory.
I'll watch for all of you as you walk.
Yeah.
I think the styles, granted they're different styles, but I think the styles as they are kind of make them kind of blend into the background and disappear more. Whereas if they were sort of white and painted and more solid, I think that would maybe be a little beyond nosy neighbor. Maybe you'd actually catch your eye as you're going by. Not to say that would be inappropriate, but I think these styles sort of kind of allow it to just sort of blend away into the background, it seems.
And even the west fence, you've got the black fence, but Virginia Tay would say, well, that might have been an iron fence.
It's not a painted wood
she would go black fence. Yeah.
All right.
I had one question.
Sure, Ben. Go ahead.
John, you mentioned that you took a gate off it. Is that at the arbor?
Yeah, it was just a gate that's always been in the arbor. It's 2 gates. I took it off just recently. It needs to use the spring-loaded hinges. That's all. Just so it's up to code. Yeah, and
All right.
because there's certain codes for that was different than what it had, but it'll be the same.
Okay.
It looks exactly like if you're curious, it looks exactly like the sides of the arbor, like off to the. It just looks like a plain fence once it's closed.
All right. Any other comments or questions, Hans?
Hey, John, this is a really good, well thought out application. It's all there. Appreciate that. Question for you on the west fence. The picture you have has got a little bit of man-made hardscape. You're not doing any of that, right? This is just 6 foot, right?
Hardscape. Let me look here real quick.
Just in the photo you've got.
Oh yeah, I don't know.
It's just the sample photo.
Okay, so you're just gonna go you just want to go 6 foot iron, right?
You to look, yeah, just right to the ground. So yeah, there won't be the good call out. Yeah, that's just a picture.
Okay.
The contract did a fence recently. So.
Is there anything iron or black related in your yard right now in the back, whether it's hardware or anything like that?
All
that
the lights
picks up on the black.
Yeah, all the lights are black.
Okay.
On the carriage house and the house, and there's a railing on the back that's black. So I think it's okay. That's a good question.
Okay, I think that's a good tie-in then. I think that will probably work well with some of your other elements in your backyard. And I think just letting it blend into the rear on the north fence, I think would probably be the best. It'd be like low maintenance too, you don't have to take care of the black and just kind of let it go and fade into the background.
Let it just age.
Yeah, I think that might be a good option for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a it's all right here in this application. It's great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from any commission members? Okay. Just to confirm, voting members on this application would be myself, Hans, Carol, Catherine, and Tomas. So would somebody like to make a motion?
I'm not ready.
Catherine's not ready?
Not ready.
I
Give me
could
something
do it.
really
I
simple,
could
like a
do it.
lamppost or something for my first.
You ready?
Go ahead, Hans.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion for a certificate of appropriateness for 100 Main Street for the installation of a fence, 2 fences around the pool to enclose the pool structure. Fence on the north side to be, or the west side to be black iron with a gate. A fence to be 6 foot high. Fence on the north side to have wood posts with, you want to go with just the natural color?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, natural color wood posts with black mesh fencing to go between the posts and to tie in with the existing post on the east side of the property. Let's see, the submission is based on the application submitted pages 1 through 7, all diagrams, plot plans, measurements included with photos. Anything else I missed?
I think that covers it. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay. Hans, how do you vote?
Aye.
Carol, how do you vote?
Aye.
Catherine, how do you vote?
Yes, for me.
Tomas, how do you vote?
Aye.
And myself is an aye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful night. Thanks for your time again.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
So before we adjourn, I think Andrea issued the minutes via email. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to review those or have any comments on those.
I have to fess up and say I have not had a chance to review those.
Oh, gosh.
Justin.
I know.
I'm fessing up too.
Bad.
But you admitted, so that's good.
I could do it tomorrow.
That's all right. But we need them approved. Can we approve them or not? Anybody else?
I have a question.
I'm ready to approve.
Sure.
Thank you, Carol.
Great.
I can abstain from approving.
Anybody else?
I think
Yeah, I read them. I'm ready to approve them.
Thank you.
I'm okay with the minutes. I had a possible new business item I wanted to bring up.
Okay.
Let's take care of the minutes and then we'll jump into that.
So I do have a change, just one change. Page 2, now you're going to ask me which minutes. I suppose we have to do 2 votes, or are we throwing these all into one vote?
Keep it simple. We can make a motion to approve as amended, pending your comments.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify in, let's see, we did a motion for the Kirk residence. This is
Yes.
the Heidi Condon.
Yes.
It's mentioned here it says small wall to be constructed as shown in the drawing on A1. If you don't mind, could we call that a knee wall to be constructed? Because that describes exactly what that wall is.
Great. Anybody else?
All right. I would like to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended. Is there a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hey.
Hey,
So-
Justin, it's too late.
I know. No, I have to mark me as abstaining. But I have faith in my fellow commissioners.
Yes, well, that's good, and you should. The only thing I have to add is that next week's meeting on the 18th, I will send you beforehand a schedule for the coming fiscal year. So, because right now we don't have a July date. So we need to vote on those dates as we do every year. Okay? So I'll send you, so all you have to do is look and see if it conflicts with anything that I try very hard to make sure that we don't do school vacations and holidays and religious holidays and things like that. So I try to avoid that, but sometimes I miss. So let me know.
So so it sounds like Tracy had some new business. So
I'm sorry, Tracy, go ahead.
yeah, so should we do that and then adjourn, or adjourn and then do that procedurally?
I think we need to listen to Tracy first.
Sounds good.
So yeah, I don't expect, let me make sure I'm not on mute. I'm not, I don't expect resolution tonight, but, you know, having been involved in this in a few months now, and, you know, because of my profession, I'm used to reading plans and things like that, but I'm wondering if there's a way to ask for a little bit more in these submittals, meaning we get a lot of really flat, like 2D elevation drawings, and I'm not looking to, you know, create expense on the side of owners or anything like that. But a lot of time, you know, I've heard several times now of like, hey, this addition doesn't impact the public realm. Look at this. But you're looking at it from a very 2D, standing in front of the front door perspective, you know, vantage point, which is not how we perceive these properties. There were a few examples tonight where we get a plot plan where if you call up a civil engineer, he's going to do a plot plan for your property. It's exactly what you pay for, but it doesn't show where the neighboring, where their front of house is. And I think when we're trying to protect these historic neighborhoods and these historic streets, it's important to take into account the context and see how close to the street the neighbor is, how, you know, if the road bends, what, you know, what you're actually experiencing as you walk up and down the streets, and not just standing directly in front looking straight at the house, you know. And software is getting better. We saw that on one of the projects tonight where they had a 3D. Not everyone can do that. I'm not asking that for anyone, but I think it can be done with at least having photos be part of the package from 100 feet down the street in each direction, or that the site plan shows, you know, the outline of the neighbor's house or something like that. Something simple, but starts to give us more context that we can better understand what's going on. And like I said a few times tonight, I keep Google Street View up on my second screen here, which we don't have the advantage of when we're sitting in town hall. it's very powerful to be able to, go down a click or two and look up at the property or look down at the property.
Yeah, that was
and I think that
helpful. I
those are
started
things
doing it as you pointed it out.
Yeah, and I think, you bring up a good point, and, we do, a lot of times we ask for that information sort of in the hearing, depending on the situation. And because sometimes, some projects will need more of that than others.
Mhm.
On occasion, we've specifically requested, 3D, SketchUp models. Sometimes we've requested an actual physical model, just, with chipboard and printed out elevations and things like that. And I think, if there are some additional things that we need as a commission to ask of applicants, I think, we absolutely should do that and feel comfortable doing that in our meetings. I don't know that we've sort of made those requests specifically for, 3D images as part of our application process as a general statement, because some projects you can get by without it, but a lot of them, particularly these bigger ones, like the one we were talking about tonight on North Street, it's extremely useful.
Mhm.
And I think, we should absolutely be requesting that of applicants if it's something that, we need as a commission, because as you say, some of us are able to read drawings a little bit easier than others and can sort of visualize that. But, I think for the benefit of everybody and for the benefit of those who can, 3D imagery, streetscape elevations, context as it relates to others, I think is important. So I think, if there's something that you feel we need to see from an applicant, I think it's completely fair to request that. And to the point of, obviously some of these things can run into money in terms of renderings and things like that, but you're right, there are simple, quick, easy ways that I think most designers and most applicants can provide. So I think, if there's something you need, ask for it. Absolutely.
Tracy, is there something you think we should require from everyone, just as because we do have a list of things that are required.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike brings up a good point. It wouldn't be for every project. The last one we
Okay.
just looked at, which was the fence, to me, knowing kind of the perimeter of what was considered public realm, whether it's the bell tower, the cemetery, not just Main Street, that's useful. But the one on, was it Leavitt Street? The one we visited the other day, that was presented to us a month ago as kind of the straight on elevation. And once we got out to the site, we saw how it has a much bigger context than just that straight on elevation. And I understand the desire to take a 200-year-old structure and make it work in the 21st century, and they want a garage and they want this, but our purview is to protect that historic realm, and that's why some of my first comments were concerns of bringing that shed towards the street. I think we ended up at a great resolution, and it was a good, group effort to get to that resolution. But, at first it was like just this straight on elevation, and why would you want to keep those trees, And it wasn't until we got an understanding of the full context that we really came to a consensus.
Can I add something? Since I'm probably the least experienced in all of this in the group. I think what you're saying is absolutely right. And I guess for me, it's easier to go see the site. If it were up to me, in most cases, I'd do a site visit. I just think my opinion changes when I see the location and how the house relates to the neighbors and how the land slants up and all of those things. But and one other thing I'd like to see on the applications is the date of the house always.
Yeah.
I think that's always very helpful.
So, I mean, I can come up with a quick list, and, I definitely, am not looking to add costs to the applicants or anything in that way, you know. And I feel like the one we looked at on Main Street today, they presented kind of what they had to make that first step, you know, before they really invested in the design and in the engineering and everything like that. And I don't blame them, but you know, we need a little bit more. You know, they don't want to spend thousands of dollars and be rejected off the bat. I totally get that.
And that is where the judgment of the commission members
Wait,
allows us.
Tracy, are you referring to the North Street property and the funny roof line?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one. That's hard to visualize.
Yeah, but perhaps a response to Tracy's observations might be that we could recommend materials for submission rather than require necessarily, and with perhaps the understanding that the commission may say, gosh, you know, in this situation, a site visit really often helps, since we don't have a fancy, you know, augmented reality fly-through.
On that one, a model would be really helpful, because I think it's a tricky one to visualize how that hip was going to fit in with the gambrel, and took a while.
Hans, you were going to mention something?
Yeah, so in the past, sometimes we've all gone out to see a site before the first presentation. You know, that can be helpful and work out, but it's also good to kind of hear what the applicant wants to do first, kind of in a town hall meeting where everybody's on the same page and they can present and why they want to do it. And sometimes people can't get out to the site on a Saturday all at once, but it can be helpful to do it up front sometimes. You know, pre-COVID, we did a little bit of that, but when you get a really busy schedule, it's tough to fit all that in too, you know. But yeah, I think you bring up some really good points, Tracy.
And I think some of the things we've asked for in the past too, particularly more so maybe when Chuck was on the large scale enlarged details, so 3-inch or 1.5-inch scale, you know, trim details, cornice details, things like that would help us understand some of the details, because you know, in some instances that's, you know, a critical part to the proposal is really getting those details right. And so I think those are some things that we've also asked for in the past, and I think are pretty important on a lot of these projects that we look at. Well, I think
we used to get the Form Bs. The reason we're not getting them anymore is that because of
It's
tough
called
access? Huh?
no, it's called no help. So, but you make a very good point. Yes, I mean that they are critical. So I will just have to gut it out and do that.
What is the Form Bs?
Those are the Mass Historical Commission forms that talk about the historical and architectural significance of the house.
Right.
So another thing, Tracy, I would just say is that as you do this for a long time, you can see there's a wide variation in terms of applications and submissions. Like the last one I thought was pretty well done. It was pretty complete. Sometimes the first application you get in will just be a couple sketches, you know.
They're just trying to throw something on the wall and see what the reaction is.
Yeah, you get a whole gamut of things. So, and you get to kind of know who the players are over time too. But I think if we could have a standard, it would be awesome.
Well, I think Tracy, if you're able to come up with a list or a few bullets or some suggestions there, I think that would be helpful.
Sure, I can do that.
I really like the photograph idea, Tracy, of, you know, I don't know how many yards you choose away in either direction.
Yeah.
So you get that long view. I think that's nice. Or maybe we make it the standard as something that we have available during our, if we ever get back to our, in the town hall meetings, that we have that available to kind of
Just
scope
read
out.
the doors.
And I think these days, that's actually a pretty reasonable and not onerous ask.
Yeah, a photo is not a high
Yeah,
bar.
yeah.
No.
Yeah. Not everyone's working in 3D, CAD or anything like that, but I think screenshots off of Street View is simple enough, or the site plans where it's just that lot bothers me a little bit, because I want to see where the neighboring structures are, where the curb line is, where the setback is, and things like that.
No, you're right. Those are all important. Absolutely.
Do you all do drive-bys like I do? I have to go see the house, so as soon as Andrew gives us the number of the house, I go drive around it, and I haven't snuck in yet. But
I've lived in the town long enough. I know it already, but if I don't, I'll
I thought I did, but boy, there's some houses I haven't seen before.
Well, and
I go to all of them too.
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage that of everybody, even if there's not a site visit set up, that you at least drive by each of the properties in advance of the meeting. It gives you the context, at least to sort of get that initial discussion going.
Yeah.
It's frustrating when people don't post house numbers, though.
Should be illegal.
I'm surprised
Yes.
how many houses don't have house numbers.
I mean, what about emergency vehicles trying to
Right.
find a house?
Right, it's a big deal. Usually you can't get an occupancy permit without a house.
Yeah.
Well, as a practical matter, Tracy, if whatever you want to send, whatever bullet points or thoughts you have, please send them to me. Since it's, we don't want to violate the open meeting law. So just send them to me, and then I can distribute that. Okay?
Yep. Okay, great.
All right.
I think that was a
Thanks,
great
everybody.
discussion. Thanks for bringing that up, Tracy. I think that was those are some good suggestions there. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
See you next week.
Aye.
Good night,
See
everybody.
you next week.
All right. Thank you all.